Welcome back to the Dynasty Nerds YouTube page. I am your host, Garrett Price, and I've got one of my oldest friends in the industry with me today. It is always a pleasure to bring in the man himself, Ray G. Ray Garvin, how you doing, my guy?
Man, anytime you or Dynasty Nerds ask me to be a part of a show, do something, the answer is unequivocally yes every single time. Much love for what y'all do. Thank you for having me on, and excited to talk about this 25 running back class, man.
Yeah, it's such a fun class, and I love having you on because look, all guests, like if we're being honest, all guests are not created equal. You know, there's some guests where you have them on and it's like, hey, that was good. We accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. And then there's other guests where it flows naturally. You're one of those guys for me where it always just flows naturally. So I always enjoy talking prospects, talking players with you. So thanks for your time, my guy.
It's all love, baby. I'm excited.
All right, let's start at the top. Let's start at the top here. I think I don't want to say consensus like 100%, but I've only seen one or two people that did not have Ashton Jeanty as their top guy. And it's always tough to know, like, is that really how you feel? Are you just saying that? But how do you feel on Ashton Jeanty? First of all, is he your one? And second of all, is it a clear tier? Is it like an A, B situation? Or is it like, man, it is like neck and neck?
Yeah, he's my one. He's the RB1 in this class. You know, we talked pre-show, and I was very transparent that I don't have a set 1 through 10 right now, but I do have a set 1, and that set 1 is Ashton Jeanty. He is the one. Doesn't matter the format, half PPR, standard scoring. He's the best running back in this class, and I do think that there are some running backs in this class that, depending on where they land, you can make a case, especially maybe in the immediate future, where that running back might get a little more opportunity or maybe a little better situation than Jeanty in year one. But ultimately, in this dynasty game that we play, I do think that he will come out atop as the best running back in this class. He's number one, man.
I think you're absolutely right. When we go back historically, for me, I've been doing the nerd score for, this is season 6 now, which is crazy. That has been that many classes. I remember like starting it. So the fact that it's year 6 of doing the nerd score is wild. But of all of the running backs that I've done over that 6-year period, I've only had one give me a higher pre-draft score on purely tape, and that guy was Bijan, and it's close. It's close between those two. So for me, like when I think historically, I wish I could say that I had that score ready when Saquon came out. I would love to comp that, but it's hard to do it when of course, we all knew he was going to be really good, but like, how good did we think he was going to be? Zeke, different guys like that, Adrian Peterson, so it's hard to comp those guys when you weren't in the weeds like you are now. But as far as him, over the past 5, 6, 7 classes, how do you feel like Ashton Jeanty stacks up against the competition?
Yeah, I mean, when you just look at his tape, when you look at the numbers, he stacks up against any of the top guys that you just named. My only pushback, and I'm being real here. He's my one. Yeah. He's the RB1. But how much of that is due to the fact that he did play in the Mountain West and he was bouncing off of defenders at San Diego State who weren't even invited to the combine to participate? What could Bijan have done had he gone to Boise State or play? It's a part of that. I factor that in. Like I don't discredit what he did, because rushing for 2,500 plus yards that's insane. I don't care what conference you're in.
Bonkers.
But it's very difficult for me to believe that if Zeke weren't in that situation, if Bijan, if Gibbs weren't in playing in a conference like that they couldn't do similar things. So I think while I measure him and the numbers might say that he's in that range, looking back, I like to say he's the best since Bijan, but remember when Bijan came out, he was the best ever. Like, people were literally saying this is the best running back prospect of all time. And then 2 years later, we're saying Jeanty's better than him. I think it's a little bit of hyperbole. I think we're a little out over our skis. He's up there with those guys, but to sit back and objectively say he's what we thought, he's better than Zeke, like Zeke coming out of Ohio State that final year. I mean, he hit the NFL and led the league in rushing as a rookie. So I don't know, GP. He's incredible. He's incredible. I'll say that.
No, I think that's absolutely fair to say. And I'm with you. I don't love throwing the generational term around. I think it's greatly, greatly overused. In my time doing this, I think the only generational prospect was Brock Bowers at his position. I think that's the only one. Outside of that, yeah, Lawrence was good, but I wasn't calling him generational. Bijan, as good as he was, and like I said, he has my highest score pre-draft. I still don't think he's generational because to me, he's in the same generation as Barkley, and I think I would have had Barkley a little bit higher. So, like, when you look at this, if it's going to be generational, there should really probably only be about one every 10 to 15 years because otherwise, it's not really a generational player. It's a good player, but it's not necessarily a generational. And that's what I think Ashton Jeanty is. I think he's one of the best. I think probably over the past decade or so of all the draft classes, he's in the top 5 most likely for me, but I don't know that he would be the guy. So interesting to talk about. Now, let's take a step back from Ashton Jeanty. Let's look at this class as a whole. I'll say this for me, and once again, looking at what we've done over the past few years, the depth of this class, specifically looking at guys that I think will be at least fantasy relevant. I'm not necessarily saying they're top 12 guys, but guys that you would at least feel within the next year or two comfortable putting in your flex spot in your starting lineup. I have about 12 to 13 guys that I think could or should be in that range. For what it's worth, the highest number I've had in previous years is 7 to 8. So that kind of shows you the depth that at least I feel is in this class. How do you feel? Like, how many guys in this class right now, and it doesn't have to be an exact number, but like, are we talking double-digit guys that you think could be usable, or are we getting a little over our skis and a little too much recency bias and a little too much excitement?
No, I don't think there's too much recency bias. I don't think this is all happening at a perfect time in the NFL, right? The running back room across the league has been propped up and held up by the 2017 class. Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon. You even go to UDFAs like Austin Eckler's. But Father Time is undefeated, and those guys are transitioning out of the NFL right now, and we have not had go look at the last couple of running back classes. They have not just been stacked, stellar, and loaded. A lot of people's RB1 last year, Jonathan Brooks isn't even going to play next season. So when you're talking about the depth of this class, hell yeah, it is loaded. It is loaded, and not saying that every one of these running backs, Garrett, they're going to be RB1s or top 5 running backs. But what you have in this class is you have archetype diversity. You've got every archetype of running back. So the beautiful thing about that is when they're eventually drafted by a team, you're going to know what Brashard Smith is going to be asked to do, because I can tell you right now, it's not bang between the tackles, right? So depending on the team he lands on, you'll have a good idea of trying to project his opportunity. Whereas a player like an Ollie Gordon, he goes to a situation where there might be a scat back in place. Think about the Pittsburgh Steelers, where you've got a Jaylen Warren and they're trying to replace that between the 20s grinder from Najee Harris. They draft Ollie Gordon. It's to do the sort of things that Najee Harris did. So what you're going to get from this class is not every back is going to be a featured guy. Not every back is going to be a 3-down, ball-dominant, high-usage rate player. But if you can nail the right situation, there are going to be a lot of opportunities to find some of those lower volume, higher efficiency players. And yes, that extends far beyond some of the top names like Jeanty, Johnson, and Henderson.
Yeah, I hear you there. And it is going to be, dude, I can't wait. I cannot wait to see the combine stuff. I can't wait to figure out these landing spots. Like, it's going to be so much fun. If you had to decide today, let's say the over-under, normally we like to set the over-unders at half points, but I'm going to be mean. If you said the over-under is 2 on running backs that go in the first round, and you don't want to get a push, you want to win, are you going with 1 running back that goes in the first round, or are you going with 3?
This is a dirty question. And why you're setting the line like a sharp book. Why can't you give me a favorable line here? You're making me pick 1 or 3.
I think 2 is starting to look pretty good, right? 2's
2's
starting to look
looking
pretty
good.
good.
2 looks good. I might shock you, man. I might shock you. I would say 1. I would say
Okay.
1. I think that because the class is so deep, because it's not just deep, but it is talented, and because
Mhm.
there is a need for that position at the next level, I think teams might wait. Jeanty, everyone knows that's the top guy.
He's going round 1.
He's going round 1, but after that, I think teams are going to say we can wait to round 2, round 3.
I think you might be right. It's going to be really interesting. Early mocks, it was always Jeanty and only Jeanty. Lately, we've been seeing a lot more Travion Henderson, Omarion Hampton sneaking into this first round a little bit. But with the depth of this class, you can still get a very productive running back in round 3 of this class, maybe even round 4 of this class. You could get an NFL caliber starting running back in this class. So that is going to be where it's tricky. How much do teams value the position? How much do they maybe value that 5th year? Because they want to push paying that running back as long as they can. Maybe is that 5th year a little bit tempting because then I can franchise tag him a year. And then by year 7, okay, I'll let him go. I don't have to worry about it. So, those are going to be some things that teams are going to have to wrestle. Or do we just wait? Do we sit pat and, hey, we got to pick early round 3? I like this guy. But the end of the first is going to be fun because there are a lot of contending teams that you would say they could use a running back. You look at the Broncos, you look at the Chargers, you look at the Steelers, you look at the Vikings, you look at the Chiefs, the Commanders. Like, there's a lot of teams in there that it wouldn't be a surprise for them to take a running back. And then you also have the teams in round 2 that they say, we hear it a lot for quarterback, but I always wonder, like, are we going to start to see it a little more like the Chiefs did the last pick? They didn't trade up, but they took CEH the last pick to get that extra year. Obviously, that didn't work out, but how much are teams going to maybe consider that when they're thinking about paying these running backs? So it'll be really interesting. But yeah, I think I'm with you. If I had to pick right now, I would lean. I think 2's the right number. I think there'll be 2, but I have a better feeling about 1 than I would 3 at this point.
Yeah, that's just where I'm at, man. I mean, you can make a case for a couple of different guys landing in round 1, and if we look up on April 28th or 27th, whenever the draft is, and pick 32 goes off the board, and we're like 3 running backs win, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't
Sure.
also I wouldn't be shocked if it's just Ashton Jeanty either. I think 2 is a good number. If you're asking me, I'd have to put some money on it today. I would say 1, 1 versus
I like
3.
it. I like it. So we know that there's a lot of big names in this class. We've talked Jeanty. We've mentioned guys like Henderson and Hampton and Caleb Johnson and some of these guys. For you right now, is there a guy that maybe is a little bit more of a sleeper for you? Well, now we're recording this right before the combine, so the combine could shift this a little bit. But is there a guy right now that, like, people are not talking about him, but they should be? Like, he is a very talented running back. Who's that guy for you?
Yeah, I think that player is a player that was a year 1 guy at this university, 2 very quality years at a Pac-12 school. And you know how that works because a lot of people don't stay up to watch Pac-12. No one's watching Oregon State. Nobody.
Sure.
Damien Martinez out of Miami.
Mm,
That is a player that I got to see up close and personal a couple of weeks ago down in Mobile. And I expected, Garrett, I expected this because at Oregon State, we wore that number 6. I expected this bigger sort of like hammer bruiser type running
sure.
back. And he was put together very different. Very lean, muscular, nothing like I envisioned when I saw him play. And he was fluid, he was fast, confident. And then you look at some of his advanced metrics, his EPA per rush, EPA per play, yards after contact, before and after attempt, they're better than some of Ashton Jeanty's numbers. And the thing about Damien Martinez, he's one of the few backs in this class that for 3 straight years has averaged over 6 yards a carry. This season, his first year with Cam Ward at Miami, his lowest rushing output, He had fewer attempts this season than he had his prior 2 years as the lead guy at Oregon State. So you're talking about a player who's not only efficient, he's got requisite size, he can catch the ball in the backfield. I believe he's going to test very well. He's one of the few guys that I believe could be drafted sometime early day 3, a la Brian Robinson in round 4, Isaiah Pacheco later, that they could work their way into a situation. Remember when we heard Davian Pierce was taking lead snaps as a rookie in Houston?
Yeah.
Martinez profiles like that. This is a player that I think we should be talking about a lot more favorably amongst his classmates because he is built very differently. He is built like one of the few running backs that can command a primary work share role. I love Martinez. He's been a massive riser for me, and I still think people are sleeping on the kid.
He had some nice tape. When I watched his tape, I really, for a big guy, we're talking, because even at the Senior Bowl, he still weighed, what, 226 or something like that? He weighed in like a good solid amount, but his feet were really good for a guy of his size. And I think that's the thing that's intriguing for me is he's got the power where he's always falling forward, he's breaking tackles, but typically you see a little bit of slower feet for these guys. Now, I'm not necessarily talking 40 speed. I don't really care how fast you can run 40 yards. That doesn't come into play very often if you're lucky once a game. But for the most part, I want to see, like, how are you able to set up defenders? How quickly are you able to make cuts and get in and out of holes? Like, how are you able to do some of that kind of stuff? And he was really fluid for a bigger guy. So I like that call. That's a nice one there. You also mentioned earlier on when we were talking, guys in different situations and different roles, and we have all the different archetypes that fit, and you can, put a guy in any spot. We see some good pass catching backs in this class, and I don't know that we would necessarily qualify Travion Henderson as a pass catching back. I think he's a little bit broader than that, but I think he does fall into that category as a little bit of an undersized back. But you've got guys like Dylan Sampson. You mentioned Smith out of SMU. Is there a guy there that you're like, I like this guy to be maybe not a between the tackles killer, but a PPR asset that's going to do some really nice things in the receiving game? Like, who's a guy we should be keeping our eye on there?
This is a great question because I think there are multiple answers. And I want to say Brashard Smith because you brought him up
Mhm.
and I really like his game. But I want to go a little deeper. I want to go to a player
Ooh.
that I believe will be drafted later than Brashard Smith and a player who, if you played in Devy leagues, you were very excited about for some
Oh, I know
years.
where you're going.
So
I know
let's
where you're
go to
going.
University of Texas, Jaydon Blue. This is a dude, when you're talking pass catcher, PP, he can fly. I mean, he can flat out fly. And while you probably do not want him handling the rock between the tackles for you, he had some issues with, I just don't think he's very good between the tackles. He had some ball security issues, which can present its ugly head in the receiving game, but he's just so natural as a pass catcher. I believe Garrett, he had over 40 receptions, close to like 350 receiving yards. I know he had over 5 receiving touchdowns, but the kid can fly. He's got great size, 6 foot, over two, I think he's around 200 pounds. But the fact that he was able to be one of those bigger running backs that could run between the tackles and then be deployed in this receiving way, I think he's one of those sneaky sleeper running backs that even if he gets late capital, no team is going to ask Blue to come in and tote the rock 25 times. That's not going to be his role. That's not going to be the expectation placed on him. But if you see him getting buzzed, you know it's going to be in a specific way. And that way is going to score you a lot of fantasy points because he's going to be catching the ball out of the backfield. And I've always said with running backs, it's not just about you being able to catch the ball. I've said there is a difference, Garrett, between running backs who can catch passes and running backs who can be deployed as pass catching weapons.
Weapons.
Just about every
Yeah.
running back could probably like catch a dump off here, right?
Right.
Those count, but I want to see the running back that can be deployed in a way in which they are the number one target. They're scheming up screens. They're doing underneath route concepts. They're giving them two-way goes. I think Jaydon Blue is a running back that can be deployed as a pass catching weapon, and he is a great athlete to boot.
I think that's a great call. I actually just watched his tape yesterday. And while like the overall score isn't amazing, it's not bad. It's a solid score. But, you know, he got dinged a little bit. I didn't love his vision. Obviously, there's not a lot of physicality power there. But when he had the ball in the open field, man, he was a different player than when he had the ball in the box. Different guy. And so that is one of those things where, like, yes, is it going to pull his overall score down? Yes. But if a team is looking to draft a guy that way, they're doing it wrong. Like and coaches do this all the time. Some guys just get it wrong. They don't do it well. But the best coaches say, hey, I need this guy for this specific. Bill Belichick was a master at that. He would find guys that were, I mean, on their Madden overall, they're guys in like the 70s. And like, they're not ballers necessarily. But he's like, look, I don't need him to do a bunch of things well. I need him to do this one specific thing. And good coaches find guys that do that specific thing well. Another guy that kind of fits this a little bit here that I'm excited about, and I'm curious because you saw him in Mobile, and I heard some good rumblings, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. LeQuint Allen, the kid out of Syracuse here, he only weighed in during the season 201, but he's up to 208 at the Senior Bowl. Curious about the combine, what he weighed in at, but really interesting player because he's 6 foot. So there's definitely room to add some to that frame. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple years he's getting closer to that 220 mark because there's still room to add to that frame. But great pass catching option. Like, loved watching him deployed as a receiver in the screen game. He was really good in the open field. But then he showed a little bit of nasty. He would show a little bit of nasty at the goal line, and he would just run guys over despite not being the biggest dude. I know you don't get to see all of that at the Senior Bowl, especially running back. You don't get like the physicality aspect of it. But what do you think of LeQuint Allen?
Yeah, and his frame is 100% the type of frame that you can easily see adding 10 to 15 more pounds. Day one, he looked kind of funny. You know those jerseys where they look big on the jersey, looks too big on the shoulder pad? He looked very small, you know, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of people you don't really comprehend how big a difference yet how little of a difference that weight is when you see it in person. Because he looked like one of the smallest running backs out there because he was so tall. And it was very noticeable that he was much smaller than Ollie Gordon. They were in the same position group, and it's like, wow, Ollie looks like he's 2 of this guy, but then he weighs, 200. So the weight for me is whatever. Like, they all look about the same size. Like, the reality is, if you ever get an opportunity to go and you walk down, they all look about the same unless you look different. And there weren't many backs that look different outside of like Ollie Gordon, Devin Neal. But Allen is fast. Allen is very fast, and he's very smooth, and he's very fluid. And those were some of the skills that he was able to display in Mobile. You can tell he was very comfortable with the ball in his hands. Day one, without the pads on fully, he kind of fell by the wayside. But once he got to put the pants on, full shoulder pads, and they were going, he was super smooth. This is a player who was really good during his career at Syracuse. So good, I didn't think he would come out. I thought he was going to go back to college for another year, and he was like, I got good enough evaluation and his opinions that I can declare now. So this is a player that, again, can be deployed as a pass-catching weapon. He is better than Blue behind the line of scrimmage. There's no doubt about it. He is a much better turnaround, hand-the-ball running back than Jaydon Blue, and he's explosive in the open field. So he's a good sleeper player, man.
I like it. Well, I don't want to keep you on here too long, but I got one last one. We've been hyping up guys. We've been talking about guys we like, sleepers, a lot of sleeper type guys that we've been talking about. But what's one guy that you're like, I just don't see it. I don't want to be negative, but right now the hype just doesn't match what I've seen.
Oh, man, this is I'm adjusting my hat for those of y'all not watching on YouTube. This is a tough one, man, because I think all of these backs are good. Like I don't know. Let me ask you this: who do you think is getting a lot of hype right now? And I'm gonna tell you if I agree with it because I don't. They all are good, Garrett. They're all good. GP. I want to see where they land. They're all really really talented backs in their own right. They're so different. Like Ollie Gordon is.
It,
I can't compare Ollie Gordon and Brashard Smith. I can't. If you ask me,
right. They're very different.
they're different running backs. I can't do it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So here's some guys that I know are polarizing players. So because and they tend to be some of the bigger names.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'll give you a couple of the bigger names that tend to be a little polarizing.
Okay.
I'm curious. Maybe just tell me real quick. I'm at consensus. I'm above consensus, or I'm below. Fair?
That's fair. I like this.
Okay. Travion Henderson.
Is consensus what? RB like 4, 3?
I would say I've heard somewhere between 2 and 4.
I'm at consensus.
Depending on who you talk to.
I'm there. I'm
Okay.
there.
All right. Cam Scattaboo.
Probably below consensus.
Okay. Quinshawn Judkins.
Probably below consensus on Quinshawn.
Caleb Johnson.
Probably higher than consensus on Caleb.
Okay. Last one, kind of a little bit of a lower name, but I'm hearing more buzz, and I like the buzz. Bashal Tootin. Right around like RB 10-ish.
Below
Consensus.
Below
Okay.
consensus.
All right. That gives us a good feel on like some of the hot button names right now. I think that's good. I like that.
Is that I don't want to back out on. Do you want to ask me about one of them to get?
No.
Okay.
No. I just, sometimes look, as analysts, we want to talk about guys we like. We want you to draft the right player, but sometimes just as important is, you know what? I would avoid this guy, not because I don't like him, not because I think he's a bad player even, just I think the community is valuing him higher than they should be. And I think there's more juice left elsewhere. That's all.
Okay.
That's all.
Can I ask you a couple?
Hit me.
Dylan Sampson.
Ooh, I'll be probably maybe a hair below. I have him right now at running back 9.
Okay.
So maybe a hair below.
Okay. Brashard Smith.
I think I'm going to be at consensus with Smith.
Caleb Johnson.
I'm a little bit low on Caleb Johnson.
I know.
I'm a little bit low.
Okay. Last one for you.
I have him at 6.
Okay. You're a little lower. You're a little lower than consensus on him. Last one for you. Ollie Gordon.
Man, I have a hard time figuring out what his consensus is. Like, what do you think?
It's probably 10, 9. I think he's a name, right? He's got to be
I might be a hair low then. I got him right now at 12.
I think you're in range. I think that's
okay.
That's in range. I think you're in.
Okay, I'll say
with
consensus then.
Yeah, I think that's range. I think 12. Okay, yeah, okay, good.
All right, that's fun. You know what? I might have to bust that out. That's a nice little click hitter. I might have to bust that out on some others.
That's a good one. That's a good clipper too. You could clip that thing. That's good.
Yeah, clip that, Peter. Clip it. All right. All right. Ray, remind the good folks what you're up to, where they can find you, all that good stuff.
Appreciate you. It's all draft all the time, baby. You can get at me at Ray Garvin, NFL on YouTube. Follow DDFFB on YouTube for all fantasy football content and get at me at Ray GQ. Appreciate you having me on, GP.
Absolutely. One of my favorites to have on. And thank you guys for tuning in. We got the draft content. We've got this 25 class, all kinds of content continuing to come your way. Stay tuned to our page, the podcast, and of course, hop in right now to the Nerd for that all 22 film room. It's the best around. You can't beat it. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time.